Welcome to Brain Friends, where two neuro nerds talk all things aphasia, language recovery, culture, and community. I am Dr. Dictrina Seles Gatson, a clinical speech-language pathologist and neuroscientist.
And I am Angie Cawthorn, stroke survivor and aphasia advocate.
Welcome to our show.
Welcome to Brain Friends.
We want to thank all of our listeners for downloading the podcast. We appreciate everyone listening, so please tell a friend to tell a friend that we are here.
And we are.
Okay, you ready?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the icebreaker.
Okay.
Name something, or is there anything that you ever really wanted to do, but Mother Nature stopped it? Mother Nature told you no.
Oh, goodness. I went to a wedding in Indianapolis for a friend of mine. And I wanted to come back home from this wedding. And it was the blizzard of 96 in Philadelphia. And it was like, the snow was really, really high. Like I couldn't find my car. Snow. Like it was crazy. And I was at my friend's wedding from college, and it was beautiful there. There's no problems there, but I'm watching the news. So Mother Nature was like, nah, you're going to have to sleep in the train station, because we were kids, right? So everybody's poor. We're all poor. And so they were on their honeymoon, right? So they had no place for me to stay to put me up. The other friends that had came in, we had all dispersed, and I ran out of money. And so I had to call a friend of mine, like, yo, I need you to wire me $50, because $50 was making all the difference in 1996.
Wow. To get home
And to have a little bite to eat on the train. It was bananas. So Mother Nature stopped me from going home. So what about you? What has Mother Nature stopped you from doing what you needed to do?
So one time, and this is still true to this day, I wanted to go skydiving. And the first two, I tried 3 times. And each time, Mother Nature, it was some element of Mother Nature that stopped me. Like the first time it was raining. The second time the wind was too strong. Right. And the third time we ran out of time before it became dark. So we wouldn't have had enough time to go up and down. And so that was something to where it was like, well, I really want to go, but I feel like Mother Nature has stopped me.
I'm going to say that's God. I'm going to stop you right there, ma'am. Ma'am. I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Okay, that is God saying, boop, sit your butt down, baby. Sit your butt down. We're not doing this.
Right, because then if I had an accident, it would have been like, I told you 3 times not to go.
This is not Disney. This ain't no Disney. On the 3rd time, things work out. This is not a Disney animation.
3 times, and each time there was a Mother Nature element that
was our father.
Yeah. So now I feel like maybe I'll just try the indoor skydiving.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. Okay. First of all, I have did I go parachute? I did something, and I was like, y'all can keep this money. Y'all need to put me down. Yeah, when I got up there, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. This was a terrible mistake. And y'all can actually just can y'all just drop me off anywhere?
Was it with a boat? Right now? Like paragliding?
Paragliding.
Or parachute, I guess is paragliding or parachuting. Like I know what you're talking about.
Something Angelique ain't had no business doing. Okay, I was like, put me down. Put me down, please. And I mean, I did it because I'm a boss. But yeah, I was like,
Yeah. Let's get into today what we're talking about. And I think that you kind of hinted at it because you said that you've been busy a lot doing things. So today I want us to kind of dive into and talk about assessments.
Yes. So I do a lot of research work. Like I take when studies come up that help researchers do stuff in Asia, I raise my hand. I'm like, whatever I can do to help. And it's helped me tremendously. But every time I go, I have to take a test.
Mm-hmm.
And I've taken the test, quite frankly, at this point, so many times,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm not a good candidate for that test anymore.
Mm.
So they have, um, do they have other tests? I know there's the WAB, which is what's it called?
Western Aphasia Battery.
And then there's the cattle.
Right. The cattle, which is the communication activities for daily living.
Right. Now the cattle is newer. Is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it measures something different. The cattle is looking at your ability to use communication within activities of daily living. And so whether it's making a phone call or, doing something with scheduling. So it's going to look at your ability to use communication within, your environment, versus the Western Aphasia Battery is looking more at the impairment level of your aphasia. So what body structures are impacted, what your ability to repeat is or to understand, versus your ability to participate in something.
So like the cattle would be more of a LPAA model.
Yeah, you could say that. Yep.
Okay,
And LPAA looks at the life participation approach to aphasia. Yes, because the cattle is looking at how you participate, how you're able to do activities. But I kind of want to, you said that you're not good for the Western Aphasia Battery. Why aren't you good for it?
Well, because there's parts of it at this point I'm actually aware of. Like I know they're going to ask me to say, how many animals begin with the letter S. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know that's a question. If I already know that's a question, I'm primed to give a good answer.
Mm-hmm. You've been
Even
at home
though,
practicing.
right, right. And here's the problem: my flex is I don't want to be wrong. Like so now it's my pride is in there. It's almost like I know the cheat sheet to the test of a test that I don't necessarily want to pass or fail. I just want to do it, but I don't want to throw off you guys' work, the researchers' work, by already knowing the answers. But I've already taken the test 1,000 times, so I don't know the answer, but I remember the answer.
Do you eat a banana before you peel it?
I don't know. Do I? What? See, well, they don't ask me that. I don't think.
Yes, that's one of the auditory comprehension. Yes, no.
Oh, do I peel and eat food before I eat it? I peel it before I eat it. Yes.
Do you eat a banana before you peel it?
I do not know. I don't know. I'm not getting what you're saying.
So one of the assessments.
I'm sorry. Do I peel? Say it again.
Do you eat a banana before you peel it?
No, after.
Yeah. So
Okay.
no would be that. Yeah.
So,
okay. So maybe in some ways that Western Aphasia Battery, depending on what the subtest is, there could still be some room.
Right. All right. Well, now you're just trying to show off that I ain't as good as.
No, I'm not.
No, that's fine.
No. Because one of the things that you were explaining that I think is so important for everyone to hear is that how those tests, especially the Western Aphasia Battery, a lot of people use it because it's reliable, meaning that I can give it to you now, do therapy, give it to you later, and it's reliable enough to show your improvement. So that test, retest, reliability is what we call it. But what you're explaining is happening is a testing effect, essentially, meaning that you've learned so many parts of the tests that you know it because you know it, not necessarily because
I
it's
know
new.
it.
Right.
Right. I remember it. It's like
There you go.
I know. I remember 5 times 5 is 25, but I no longer know that 5 times 5. Like I remember because my father drilled that into my head. But and they also made us learn turntables in that way. But it's one thing to know something, and it's another thing to remember it. And so I found very, some of the parts, like they have the story in it, and they take the wob as it's because I have aphasia, but I also feel like I have cognitive impairment. And I don't know if the cognitive impairment is more than the aphasia, or is the aphasia the definition of my cognitive impairment?
Ooh, you're saying a lot of good stuff. So when you say that you have cognitive impairment, tell me what some of those cognitive challenges are.
My reading, my short-term memory is my ability to understand a task and complete. My follow through is ridiculously not where I need it to be. And I realize I'm getting clues now where I might have been a time where I told you I'm feeling better. I feel so much better. I'm getting smarter. I feel it. And then a week later, I'm where I was. And and I don't know if that's just regular depression kicking in, right? I feel like I'm the same, but you know what I mean? But yet, so I don't know if that's neuroplasticity kicking in and things are happening in my brain in a good way. And that's why I'm having this boost. And then I go back down to my baseline. You know what I'm saying?
Go back down to your baseline when you're doing assessments, or just in your day-to-day?
Just in my day-to-day. Just in cooking,
Okay.
It's still, as much as I love baking, it's still not as a good flow as I know as it should be. For as much as I do it, I should have a much better consistent. No, I should be better at it. And my flow should be better.
Okay, so I'm in we are talking about assessment. So the clinician in me is kind of kicking in a little bit.
I love it. Come on, clinician. Come on, Miss SLP.
The SLP in me. So when you say your flow, are you talking about the reading of the recipes, the sequencing of the steps?
The sequencing of the step,
okay.
The reading of the recipe, the knowing I already know the recipe. First of all, why am I looking at a recipe? It's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like you should, as much as I just made some sticky buns 2 days ago, they were bangers. Yes, they were. But I'm still looking at my recipe like I don't know. I feel like before the stroke, I didn't need the recipe.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's my baseline.
Right.
And now 7 years later, even though I'm much better, I can't get anything done without looking at it 20 times. And my flow and my sequencing is not as, and every once in a while, it'll feel like I got this. And that's when I'm like, Dr. Seles, I'm feeling so much better. Look at me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wah, wah. Get the sound effects out.
Well, this is so good. I'm glad that you're sharing, because you're right. When you're looking at the sequencing aspect of it, that is cognition. So that's your executive function, your ability to organize and sequence steps, versus your reading part of the recipe can be linked to your aphasia given where the damage is. And so one thing that I would challenge you to do to help with your neuroplasticity is maybe try to do it without the recipe, or say to yourself, you know what? Okay, I'm cooking. I'm only going to look at this recipe 5 times, or set a certain number for yourself. And then practice. The cognition piece would be practicing, remembering whatever it is, whether it's the ingredients or which step is next. And you might mess up one, but the more you do that, that can help build the neuroplasticity and get you stronger in being able to not use the recipe if that's a goal.
Here's the issue. Here's my personality flaw. I don't have the patience for it not to be right.
Oh, well.
It would bother me more that it's not right. And yeah, I get what you're saying, but I don't have patience for it not to be right. Like,
so that means you need to give yourself grace then for using the recipe, because that is what gives you more
you're right.
peace.
You're right. No, you're right. And I should give myself more grace and give myself more grace. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Now, just curious, out of another test besides the Western Aphasia Battery, have you ever done the Boston Diagnostic Aphasia exam?
That sounds familiar. What's that one look like?
So it's the same in the sense of it looks at the impairment of aphasia versus your participation or how you use communication. So sometimes people might use the Western Aphasia Battery. Sometimes people might use the Boston Diagnostic Aphasia exam. Mm-hmm. And there are some other ones that are coming into play because of I don't want to say overuse, especially because if the WAB wants to sponsor us, hey, we're here. But the hallmark.
I didn't know that was a thing. I love the WAB.
I know, right? That's my favorite one. But the hallmark, and I've said this in one of the manuscripts that we've published, which is that the WAB, the Western Aphasia Battery, is often used as a hallmark exam. And I don't know if this is public knowledge, but aren't you doing some things with it to help minimize the potential assessment bias related to the WAB, because it hasn't really been normed in a diverse group?
I am actually working on a project that's coming up, and their aphasia team is working on trying to fix some of the inherent biases of the WAB. And because some of those pictures, first of all, not only are they terribly drawn, but they really don't depict the cultural differences that are seen in American life. And to test American life, but you're not testing the full spectrum,
right,
is an inherent bias of the tests. And so they might think we don't communicate well, or they might score slower based off of a cultural difference of the person that's given the test.
Right.
So we're trying to eliminate some of that.
I think that's so awesome. That's one of the things that we said in a manuscript that we published, where we found that the Western Aphasia Battery had a baseline bias. It wasn't statistically significant as far as the raw numbers, but one of the reasons why we saw a difference between the groups, we looked at black and white, was that potentially that when you give these picture description tasks that aren't necessarily relevant to different cultures, then with individuals with aphasia, you can make it more of like a code switching or vocab semantic recall versus the individual pulling words from the vocabulary that they know. They're thinking like, oh, well, what was that? I've seen that before. What was that called?
Right, right. I'm like, uh-huh. Okay, let me.
No, don't say uh-huh, because if you don't get it, then somebody else ain't.
Well, see, this is what I be trying to tell you. I am slower than I present. Like people tell me all the time, like I say about my reading, and I discussed this with you before as well. Like I can read, but the words don't really make it in. So they say, well, so listen to a book, do an audio book. It still doesn't make it in. It's my comprehension.
Mm.
I can read the words. I can read the words in somewhat of a sentence. I can get that's fine. But the whole story doesn't come. The
Mm-hmm.
whole movie doesn't come. The whole book, even if I'm listening to it, doesn't come on the first or second time. I can
Mm-hmm.
be watching a TV show. I have no idea who these characters are, or if they're not the same person, or like, so, don't let it be a cool movie where people are doing stuff and then somebody else and they do a flashback. Oh, I'm done. I have no idea what's going on
Oh,
because I can't
keep that in.
cognitively, cognitively. I don't know, that has nothing to do with aphasia. That's just brain damage. Is it
Right.
not?
Yeah. I think that that's one of the challenges with some aphasia research that looks at cognition is because some of these things are related to cognition. But if an individual is unable to say it like how you just communicated it, then it's hard for me to one understand that that's the issue. You get what I'm saying? So
No,
like
I
for an
do.
example, okay, you got it. Okay. So an example would be sometimes when you ask, like in the earlier assessments, if you ask somebody in the hospital, orientation questions like, where are you? Why are you here? You have to be mindful that their ability to answer it is based on their aphasia versus their cognition of it, meaning like being able to remember.
Right.
Because they could possibly know where they are, the cognitive part, they know where they are, but they're not able to say it.
And we are not judged by what we know. We are judged by what we can prove we know.
Right.
And if I can't say it, I don't know it.
Right.
And that's just the way this part of the game is played. So I'm judged on, you know, that cognitive part that can be gone, or is it my aphasia, or do we just box it all up and call it aphasia because it has to have a name? Because if it's mild cognitive impairment, that sounds like a road to dementia.
Well, that sounds like a new episode.
Come through, new episode.
That sounds like a new episode, but I think the thing is we've talked about this before where people say it's not a loss of intellect, it's a loss of the ability to say the word.
Yeah.
And I know you have pushed back on that. And so we could definitely talk about that when we talk about mild cognitive impairment. But I think where the disconnect is that sometimes it is cognition and not just the point that you can't say what you want to say. But the hallmark sign of aphasia is that you know what you want to say, you just can't produce it because of the verbal or the expression piece of it, which that production piece is what really is the differentiating factor
Right.
of aphasia versus because someone with cognition, they might not they might not even be able to remember or know what they want to say. So it's not that they can't produce the word's not even there.
That sounds legit too. But I mean, there is a part of it's that tip of the tongue feeling, or sometimes like if a person is playing like a trivia game and you know the answer, like a music, what song is that? And you have that, I know the song. I just hold on. I know the song. You live in that. I know what I want to say with aphasia all the time. But the cognition part of it, of the memory and how things are just messed up in your brain, I'm sorry, I'm getting off thought. I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know how to fix that.
Well, I think that this has been a great time to talk about assessments and the
Right.
need to diversify assessments, especially the impairment based ones. Just a follow up question out of those two, the Western Aphasia Battery and the cattle. Another one that I like a lot is the ALA, which is the assessment for living with aphasia. It also looks at participation. I was going to ask you, out of those two, the cattle and the Western Aphasia Battery, did you like one more than the other?
The cattle.
Why?
I found it to be more of a challenge.
Ooh.
I found it to be more of a challenge. And now that you explained to me what they are and the differences, and I just took them like 2 days ago, and I took them both. I see what you're saying about one being assessment and one asking me, like, how do you get to the bank? Or this is going to be on TV. Find this on the, versus, whatever's on the wall with the picture of the tree and the firemen coming to get the man out the tree because the little girl ain't in the tree. He went up there to get the cat. Again, if I know that 3 days later, it's not really a test.
Right.
If I remember, even though I don't know nothing about peeling no banana and when I'll eat it. Now you came through, doctor. Okay, Dr. Seles.
No, I mean, that just goes to show how that test is used so much, like to the point where I've given that test so many times to where I can just say them. I can the questions live in my mind.
They rent free.
Definitely rent free. Last question. What about quality of life tests? So outcomes that ask you about how you feel, how you're able to, navigate, like your perception of how aphasia has impacted your life. Did you take any of those types of assessments?
There was one test where she asked me, like, if you needed somebody to look after you, do you have somebody to look after you? And it was a scale of 1 to 5.
Okay, sounds like a social support.
Yeah, and I remember I answered 5 on all of them, and she was like, "Wow, that's amazing that you have answered the 5 to everything."
Yeah. Did you like that type of test?
Yeah, well, because I'm answering 5, I mean, so yeah, it was great for me. But if a person that's answering 1 or 2 to all the questions, that's not making them feel good at the end of that test. I came out feeling amazing because it just reaffirmed that I have somebody to look after me, and I have friends, and I have a purpose of being.
Yes.
But if a person doesn't, we just put in their face for a good 5 minutes, tell me everything that's wrong in your life. That social assessment, like, you know what I mean? So it was great for me.
Right. Well, I know we're out of time, but I'm so grateful to hear that you did that type of assessment too, because as someone who is really about those types of tests, the social support, I feel like if you were a person that answered 2 and 1 and some of the lower numbers as a therapist, that would tell me that we need to try to structure your therapy and communication in a context that helps you participate with people or not be as isolated, because then you can get depression and all these other things if you don't have a sense of purpose or you do feel like you don't have the social support.
Yeah. It's I wouldn't even know, how would you, as a therapist, how does that even, if you find out that somebody is, and I know I'm pretty sure you guys would be like mandated reporters, but how would you even know if somebody's giving you 1s and 2s and you're like, uh-oh, this person is, you know, in a darker place than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And you only have 8 weeks anyway. You haven't even given the cattle yet. How do you juggle that as a practitioner?
Well, I would do it in a couple of ways. One way would be to, of course, asking the patient first before you're, you know, going and doing these things, but reaching out to social workers to see if they're able to kind of like help support some way in that, whether it's through community service programs or just any additional advice that they can give. I would definitely do a neuropsychology consult to make sure that that individual has the mental support that's necessary navigating something like this individually. And then as a therapist, besides those two things, I would really just try to get the person involved in groups or see if there was an opportunity to, instead of just doing individual therapy sessions, if we could do a group therapy session like once a week if they're coming twice a week, to kind of give that level of camaraderie and just that the person wasn't alone
And give them that support.
Yeah.
That is good stuff. Thank you, Dr. Seles. This has been so good.
Yes. Thanks, Angie. Bye.
Peace, y'all.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Brain Friends. Please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite streaming platform. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Brain Friends, the podcast.